Listen carefully, because this message is not random, and it is not ordinary, and it is not something you just happen to scroll past by accident, but somehow at this exact moment, while you are breathing and thinking and wondering about things you have never fully said out loud, someone somewhere is quietly speaking your name before God, and you may not see them, and you may not even know who they are, and you may never realize how many nights they have stayed awake thinking about you. But right now, in this very season of your life, when things feel uncertain, and when your strength feels thinner than it used to be, and when your heart has carried more questions than answers, there is a prayer moving in the background of your story, and that prayer is not weak, and it is not small, and it is not wasted, because heaven listens differently when someone prays for you with sincerity and love and faith. And what you need to understand today is that God often begins His biggest miracles in secret places, through silent prayers spoken by people you never expected. And sometimes those prayers come from a mother who still whispers your name when nobody is watching, and sometimes they come from a friend who believes in your future more than you believe in it yourself, and sometimes they come from a stranger who felt led by the Holy Spirit to pray for someone they could not even see, and somehow your name reached their heart and they obeyed that quiet instruction. And right now, while you are trying to stay strong, and while you are trying to understand why certain doors closed, and why certain people left, and why certain dreams seem delayed, there is someone asking God to protect you, to guide you, to strengthen you, to restore what you thought was permanently broken. And that prayer is already changing things around you, even if you cannot recognize the evidence yet, because God moves in ways that your eyes cannot measure and your mind cannot predict, and your timeline cannot control. And what feels like silence to you is often the sound of heaven working behind the scenes, and what feels like delay to you is often divine preparation being completed, one unseen detail at a time. And maybe you have felt recently like something is shifting inside you, even though nothing around you looks different, and maybe you have felt a strange strength rising in moments when you expected to feel weak, and maybe you have noticed a quiet peace showing up in situations that normally would have made you anxious and confused and overwhelmed. And that is not coincidence, that is confirmation, because prayers spoken in secret create protection in public, and blessings in motion, and favor in places you cannot yet see. And there are moments in life when God allows someone else to carry you spiritually until you are strong enough to stand again on your own. And maybe that is what is happening right now in your story, because even when you thought nobody noticed your struggles, somebody was lifting your name toward heaven and asking God to step into your situation with power and mercy and direction. And you may not know who they are, and you may not know when they started praying for you, but what matters is that heaven heard them and heaven responded, and heaven never ignores a sincere prayer spoken with love and faith and intention. And what you are walking through right now is not punishment, and it is not abandonment, and it is not the end of your path, but instead, it is the beginning of something God prepared long before you ever faced this season. And sometimes the greatest evidence that God is moving in your life is not what you can see, but what you survived. And the fact that you are still here reading these words right now means there has already been protection around you that you did not notice, and strength inside you that you did not create, and direction ahead of you that you did not design. And somewhere in the quiet background of your life, someone kept believing in your breakthrough even when you started losing confidence in yourself. And sometimes God assigns people to pray for you the same way He assigns angels to guard you, because prayer changes atmospheres, and prayer breaks chains, and prayer opens doors that effort alone cannot open. And maybe there were nights when you almost gave up, but something inside you told you to keep going. And maybe there were mornings when you did not feel ready, but somehow you still stood up and kept moving forward, and that strength did not come from Nowhere it came from heaven responding to a voice that was speaking your name in faith when you could not find the words yourself, and sometimes the person praying for you does not even realize how important their obedience is, and sometimes they simply feel a quiet push in their spirit telling them to pray without knowing why, and they follow that feeling and they whisper a simple request for your protection and your guidance and your future, and heaven takes that whisper seriously and begins arranging details that will eventually lead you into doors you never expected and opportunities you never imagined and restoration you never thought was possible. And what you need to remember today is that God never lets sincere prayer fall to the ground unanswered, and every prayer spoken for you is building something ahead of you even now, and there are blessings already moving toward your life because somebody chose to believe that your story is not finished, and somebody chose to trust that your future is still full of purpose, and somebody chose to speak hope over your situation when everything around you looked uncertain. And maybe you have felt lately like you are standing in the middle of a transition you did not choose, and maybe you have wondered why certain relationships changed and why certain plans shifted and why certain opportunities disappeared. But what if those changes were not losses at all but redirections created through prayers you never heard? And what if God has been clearing space in your life for something stronger, something healthier, something more aligned with the destiny He prepared for you long before you understood where you were going? And sometimes the biggest evidence that someone is praying for you is the protection you did not realize you received, and the trouble you almost stepped into but somehow avoided, and the doors that closed before they could lead you somewhere painful, and the strength that showed up right when you thought you had nothing left to give. And the truth is, there are moments when heaven works quietly because the blessing being prepared is too important to rush and too powerful to interrupt and too personal to explain before the right time arrives. And maybe right now you are closer than you think to the answer someone has been praying over your life, and maybe the peace you are beginning to feel is not random but confirmation that God is responding to prayer spoken in secret on your behalf. And maybe the strength rising inside you is not your imagination but evidence that something is shifting spiritually around your situation. And maybe the doors that are about to open will make you realize that you were never walking alone, even when it felt like you were, and Jesus has always known your name and your struggle and your purpose and your future. And sometimes He moves through the faith of another person to reach you exactly when you need it most, and what feels invisible right now will soon become undeniable, and what feels uncertain right now will soon become clear, and what feels delayed right now will soon reveal its reason. And one day you may look back at this exact season and realize that while you were worrying about what you lost, someone else was praying for what you were about to gain, and heaven was already preparing a path forward that was stronger than anything behind you. And that is why you are still standing, and that is why your story is still moving, and that is why your breakthrough is closer than you think. And right now, even as you read this message, there is still someone somewhere speaking your name in prayer, believing that your future is brighter than your past, believing that your strength is greater than your struggle, believing that your purpose is stronger than your fear. And heaven is listening to every word they are saying about you. Folded hand sparkles, and what is coming next in your life will prove that those prayers were never wasted and never ignored and never forgotten, because God always finishes what He begins in your story, and He is already moving in ways you cannot yet see. But soon you will understand why this exact moment mattered more than you realized, and why this season was never empty but secretly full of preparation, protection, and promise, waiting for the right time to appear in your life. And what you are about to realize right now is something deeply personal and incredibly powerful, because there are moments in life when you feel like no one truly understands what you are carrying inside your heart, and there are nights when your thoughts become heavier than your voice and your prayers become quieter than your fears. Yet even in those silent moments, someone somewhere has been whispering your name in their prayers, asking God to protect you, to strengthen you, to guide you, and to open doors for you that you cannot open by yourself. And the truth is, you may never fully know who that person is, but heaven knows exactly who they are, and heaven has already begun responding to the prayers they are speaking over your life right now. And that means what you are experiencing is not random, and what you are walking through is not meaningless, because there is a spiritual connection happening behind the scenes that is stronger than coincidence and deeper than timing and more intentional than you ever imagined. And sometimes the greatest evidence that someone is praying for you is not found in what changes around you, but in what suddenly begins changing inside you, because you start finding strength where there used to be weakness, and clarity where there used to be confusion, and peace where there used to be anxiety, and courage where there used to be hesitation. And you begin to move forward even when nothing around you has completely shifted yet. And that is not an accident. That is the quiet power of prayer moving through your life in ways that your eyes cannot always see, but your spirit can absolutely feel. And there are people who believe prayer only matters when you know it is happening, but the truth is, some of the most powerful prayers spoken over your life are the ones you never hear and never expect, because God often places someone in your story whose assignment is not to stay forever, but to pray for you faithfully until the moment you step into the next season He prepared for you long before you even realized you needed it. And right now there is a reason you did not scroll past this message. There is a reason something inside your heart paused and paid attention, because your spirit recognizes when truth is speaking directly to your situation. And what you are hearing in this moment is not random motivation, but confirmation that something spiritual is happening around you, even if your circumstances have not fully caught up yet. And there are times when you thought you were walking alone, through disappointment, through rejection, through delays, through unanswered questions, through moments that felt confusing and heavy and unfair. But what you did not see was that someone was quietly asking God to cover you with protection, to guide your decisions, to guard your heart, and to keep you moving forward even when you felt like giving up. And sometimes the only reason you did not break during certain seasons was because someone else refused to stop praying for you. And sometimes the only reason certain doors closed was because someone else asked God to redirect your path before you stepped into something that would have hurt you later. And sometimes the only reason you are still standing right now is because someone believed in your future enough to pray for it even when you did not fully believe in it yourself. And that kind of prayer is powerful because it moves ahead of you into places you have not reached yet, and begins preparing opportunities you cannot see yet, and starts shifting situations before you even arrive there. And that means the delays you felt were not punishment, and the silence you experienced was not abandonment, and the waiting you endured was not wasted time, but preparation guided by prayers that were spoken over your life long before you understood why certain things had to happen the way they did. And what makes this moment even more important is that you are closer than you think to seeing evidence that those prayers were working the entire time, because there comes a point when what was invisible begins becoming visible, and what was delayed begins moving suddenly, and what once felt uncertain begins becoming clear. And when that moment arrives, you will look back and realize that even when you felt forgotten, heaven was still working on your behalf, and even when you felt overlooked, God was still positioning people to support you spiritually in ways that protected your destiny. And there is something happening right Now that you need to understand clearly, because someone is not only praying for your strength, they are praying for your breakthrough, and they are not only praying for your peace, they are praying for your purpose, and they are not only praying for your protection, they are praying for your elevation. And that means what is coming into your life next is not small and not temporary and not ordinary, but intentional, powerful, and perfectly timed for the season you are stepping into right now. And if you can feel something shifting inside you as you listen to these words, then that is your confirmation that the prayers spoken over your life are already beginning to move things into place even before you can see the full picture yet. Folded hand sparkles, and what you are about to witness next in your journey will begin to reveal just how many unseen blessings were already surrounding you this entire time. There is a reason your spirit feels different lately, even though your circumstances may not have changed yet, because what you cannot see is that someone somewhere has been mentioning your name before God in moments when you were too tired to pray for yourself, and while you were trying to stay strong on the outside, heaven was already moving quietly on your behalf behind the scenes, preparing doors that no human effort could have opened alone. And the strange peace you felt in the middle of confusion was not random. It was evidence that those hidden prayers had already reached the heart of God before you even realized how desperate your situation truly was, because sometimes God assigns someone to stand in the gap for you when your strength is running low and your faith feels silent. And even though you thought nobody noticed your tears, someone was lifting your name with faith stronger than your fear, asking God to protect you, guide you, restore you, and bring justice into the places where you were misunderstood, ignored, or even broken by people you trusted. And what makes this moment powerful is that the prayer being spoken over your life right now is not small, it is not ordinary, and it is not temporary, because when someone intercedes for you with sincerity, heaven begins to rearrange timing, connections, opportunities, and protection around your future in ways you cannot yet measure, which explains why certain attacks that should have destroyed you somehow missed you. Certain disappointments that should have ended your hope somehow redirected you, and certain closed doors that felt painful at the time later revealed themselves to be divine protection instead of rejection. And the truth is, there are people you may never even meet who have been led by God to pray for someone exactly like you without realizing they were praying specifically for your breakthrough, your healing, your restoration, and your next season, because God often hides the identity of intercessors so that your faith stays focused on Him instead of people. And right now, as you listen to this message, something inside you is starting to recognize that you were never as alone as you thought. You were never forgotten the way you feared. You were never abandoned the way your emotions tried to convince you, because unseen prayers create unseen protection, and unseen protection creates visible miracles at the exact moment when your life needs them the most, which is why your story did not end in the chapter where everything looked impossible, and why your strength returned after nights when you felt completely empty, and why your path kept moving forward even when you could not see where it was leading, because someone somewhere kept asking God not to let you give up, not to let you lose your purpose, not to let your heart close, and not to let your destiny be stolen by discouragement. And that kind of prayer carries power that continues working even when you are resting, even when you are doubting, even when you are waiting. And even now, while you are hearing these words, there is spiritual movement happening around your life that you cannot yet see, but very soon you will recognize it through unexpected opportunities, unexpected clarity, unexpected peace, and unexpected restoration that arrives at the perfect moment, reminding you that heaven heard every whisper spoken on your behalf long before you realized your breakthrough was already on its way. And what you are stepping into next will make it clear that those secret prayers were never wasted. They were building a path for you this entire time, leading you exactly where God planned for you to be. There is something deeply spiritual happening around you right now that you cannot see with your eyes, but your soul has already started to feel it, because the reason certain doors suddenly closed without explanation, the reason some people slowly walked out of your life without a clear goodbye, and the reason your heart has been carrying both confusion and quiet expectation at the same time is because someone somewhere has been mentioning your name in prayer when you were not even strong enough to pray for yourself, and those hidden prayers have been moving pieces in the spiritual realm long before you ever noticed anything changing in your physical world. And what you must understand in this moment is that God often begins answering prayers before the person being prayed for even realizes they were the reason heaven started moving in the first place, which means the silence you experienced recently was never rejection. It was preparation. The delay you felt was never abandonment, it was protection, and the loneliness you walked through was never punishment. It was positioning, because sometimes God removes noise so you can finally hear the direction He has been trying to give you all along. There are nights when someone has stayed awake longer than they planned just to whisper your name into heaven, asking God to strengthen your heart, to heal what you never explained to anyone, and to open opportunities that even you stopped believing were possible. And what makes this powerful is that many times the person praying for you may never tell you they did it, because real intercession does not look for recognition. It looks for restoration, and right now restoration has already started, moving toward you, even if your situation still looks the same on the outside, because spiritual change always happens before visible change. And that is why you must not mistake delay for denial, because heaven's timing is not slow, it is precise. Something inside you has been shifting recently, and you may have noticed it in small ways, like the way certain worries no longer control your thoughts the same way they used to, or the way your heart feels calmer about situations that once overwhelmed you. And this is not random emotional movement. This is the quiet evidence that someone's prayers have already started building strength inside you that you did not create on your own. Because when someone prays for you sincerely, God sends peace ahead of the blessing, so that when the blessing arrives you are finally strong enough to receive it without fear. You were never meant to stay stuck in the season you just survived, and the reason things started changing even before you asked for change is because heaven responds not only to your prayers but also to the prayers spoken on your behalf. Which means while you were focusing on surviving day by day, someone else was focusing on your breakthrough day by day, and those prayers have been surrounding you like invisible protection, keeping certain problems from reaching you and redirecting certain dangers you never even noticed were coming toward your life. There is a reason you are still standing after everything that tried to shake your confidence, and there is a reason your hope did not completely disappear even when disappointment kept showing up again and again, and that reason is simple but powerful, because someone refused to stop praying for you even when they had no proof anything was changing yet, and their faith has been carrying you through moments where your own faith felt too weak to keep going. What is about to happen next in your life will begin to reveal just how many unseen prayers were working behind the scenes, because doors that stayed closed for a long time will suddenly begin opening without resistance, and opportunities that once ignored you will begin finding their way toward you, and the clarity you kept asking God for will start arriving in ways that feel undeniable and unmistakable. And when that happens, you will finally understand that none of this movement started recently. It started the moment someone chose to speak your name before God when you needed help the most. Right now, even if your circumstances still look unfinished, you must remember that heaven does not respond halfway, and when someone prays for you sincerely, God does not begin something He plans to abandon later, which means what is unfolding around you is not temporary encouragement. It is permanent direction, and the same God who listened when your name was whispered in prayer is the same God who is already arranging the next chapter of your story with purpose, timing, and protection that no obstacle can cancel. Folded hands sparkles. And what makes this moment even more powerful is that very soon you are going to recognize signs that confirm those prayers were real, because certain answers will arrive faster than expected, and certain connections will appear exactly when you need them most, and certain burdens you carried for years will suddenly feel lighter without explanation. And when that happens, you will realize that someone's quiet faith in God for your life became the turning point you didn't even know you were waiting for. There is a reason your spirit has been feeling something unusual lately, even if nothing around you looks different yet, because when someone has been praying for you consistently, God begins to prepare your future before He reveals your blessing, and that preparation often feels like confusion before clarity, silence before direction, and waiting before movement. Which is why the season you are standing in right now is not empty the way it appears on the surface, because unseen prayers have already started opening paths that your eyes have not discovered yet. And while you may think nothing is happening, heaven has been arranging moments, shifting conversations, and redirecting outcomes in ways you cannot measure but will soon recognize as intentional and perfectly timed. Someone has been asking God to protect your heart from the things that were meant to discourage you permanently, and that is exactly why, even after disappointment visited your life more than once, your hope never completely disappeared, because those prayers created a covering around your spirit that kept you standing when you should have been overwhelmed, and kept you believing when it would have been easier to stop expecting anything good to happen again. And this is how you know those prayers were real, because they strengthened parts of you that nobody else could see, and restored courage inside you that even you did not realize was returning slowly day by day. What you are about to step into next will not look like the struggle you just walked through, because God does not allow sincere prayers to end without purpose, and He does not allow faithful intercession to remain unanswered forever, which means the same quiet season that tested your patience has also been building your stability, and the same waiting season that made you question your timing has actually been aligning you with something that will arrive at the exact moment you are ready to receive it without fear or confusion. And this alignment is not accidental, because heaven never moves randomly when someone is praying for your destiny with intention. There are doors that stayed closed not because you were unworthy, but because someone was praying that the wrong opportunities would not distract you from the right direction. And even though at the time those closed doors felt like rejection, they were actually protection that prevented you from stepping into situations that would have delayed the purpose God is now preparing to reveal in your life. And one day soon you will look back at those moments and understand that what you thought was loss was actually guidance working quietly in your favor long before you recognized it. You may not know exactly who has been lifting your name before God, but you are already living inside the evidence of those prayers, because your strength returned when you expected weakness, your peace returned when you expected anxiety, and your patience returned when you expected frustration to take control of your thoughts. And these changes are never random, because when someone prays for you sincerely, heaven responds by restoring what pressure tried to remove from your spirit, and by protecting what purpose still needs in order to grow inside your life. Very soon you are going to notice something shift in a way that feels unmistakable, because opportunities will begin appearing that match the desires you once whispered quietly in prayer, and the timing of those opportunities will feel too perfect to ignore, which is how God confirms that unseen prayers have already prepared the road ahead of you, and that the waiting season you survived was never wasted time but necessary time that positioned you exactly where your next breakthrough could finally reach you without delay or confusion. There is also someone who asked God not only to bless you but to keep you safe from decisions that could have taken you away from your purpose, and because of those prayers certain plans you expected to succeed suddenly changed direction, and certain relationships you thought would last suddenly faded away, and even though those moments felt painful at the time, they were actually answers working quietly in your favor, because protection often looks like disappointment before it reveals itself as wisdom. Now you are standing closer than you realize to the moment when everything begins making sense, because heaven never ignores sincere prayers spoken for your future, and God never allows faith placed in your name to return without results, which means what is coming next will carry confirmation that you were never forgotten, never overlooked, and never walking alone through the difficult season you just survived, because someone's quiet belief in what God could do for your life has already started shaping the path that is about to open in front of you in ways that will restore your confidence, strengthen your direction, and remind you that even when you felt unseen, your story was always being protected and prepared for something greater than what you lost along the way.